What's up, everybody? It's CMP with Craftmaster Productions and Studio1Tutorials.com. Don't forget to stop by Studio One Tutorials, pick up your premium membership. It is 50 cents a day. And don't forget to stop by CMPKits.com. Get yourself a copy of Drill MIDI, get yourself a copy of Drill Loops, and take yourself from, dog, I don't know where to put the hi-hats on these beats, to Axel beats. And also, don't forget to follow the legendary Spicy Sundays podcast. You can get us at Spotify, me and MG the Future, every Sunday. Follow me on IG, hit me up, my DMs are open, ask me whatever questions you want. Now, today we're going to be working on making this sample you hear in the background a lo-fi dark hip-hop sample for Griselda. This will work in any DAW. We're going to be working in Studio 1.4, but you can use FL Studio, you can use Ableton Live. So let's get into exactly what goes into making something like this. Dark lo-fi hip-hop is really what the whole Griselda sound revolves around, and it's something that, as long as you pay attention to your textures and as long as you're making an effort not to be, you know, straightforward and vanilla, it's really easy to wrap your head around. Now today what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using a chord progression to build this out. This is how I built it. It's off this chord progression. Now this is available in the Studio One tutorials Dropbox, right? So in the YouTube tutorial files folder, inside of the Studio One tutorials Dropbox, I have added a dark lo-fi hip hop folder, and then I'm going to be adding all the chord progressions and the melodies in MIDI format from these tutorials, right? So I use this chord progression here, and it's just, when you hear it like this, it's just a simple. And the thing is when you have, a chord progression, a set of chords that works like this, to turn it into a melody, it's really easy to get that going. What I did was I went from this picture right here to just taking notes, and this guy was out here, and I just slid it over like this. I slid this note over. And that's pretty much how I was able to build the melody from a chords first perspective. Now, the one thing that is really important, I mean, you guys have seen chords and melodies to death. What's important about, dark lo-fi hip hop and Griselda type beats is you want to focus, like, laser in on the nuances, right? So if you look at my MIDI here, it's less about the notes being played and how they're played, right? So you see that, of course I have a varying velocity, but also if you look at it, none of my notes within the chord are hitting at the same time ever. That never happens ever. So you have to either play this out by hand, or you need to take extra care in your programming, right? The other thing that you want to do is you want your notes to hit late on the grid. You don't really want a lot of stuff going on before. You kind of want to shift things over to the right, and the way that you want to do it is individually. You don't just want it to be like highlight all the notes, shift them over to the right, because that you're not doing anything at that point. Your change is going to be relative. No, it needs to be individual. There needs to be you have to focus in on there being a sense of randomness to all this, and that is what's going to make it more human, and it's gonna make it more convincing. If you produce a sample pack and all of the notes are perfectly on time, the people who get it, who want to make these type of beats, they're not going to be drawn to it. What they're drawn to, from so much of, like, the dark lo-fi hip hop is the kind of off kilter loose rhythm of this. And when you listen to it by itself in isolation, it doesn't sound offbeat or anything. The the other thing that you want to do, you know, if you're gonna create a sample that's just one instrument, where it's not necessarily so much of a composition, all right, it's just a piece, is you want to make sure that it evolves, and the easiest way to do that is to have your melody climb octaves. Now, if you look at what I did here, this might looks like, oh wow, that's some like complex MIDI. How'd you think of that? Really, all this is the same MIDI as over there, and I transposed, or this actually stayed the same. Where is it? This guy right here. I transposed this up one. I added this small walk down right here, and then I highlighted all of this and pressed up, you know, and that was it. The other thing, the other thing that makes this, special is the processing, right? So on the actual instrument, I used on the actual piano, I used Kramer Tape in order to simulate tape saturation. They have a wow and flutter function on Kramer Tape. It's not as pronounced as, you know, like an RC20, and I like that because everybody shit sounds like RC20. Therefore, RC20 is like increasingly corny now. So, going back to going back to Kramer Tape, that's awesome. And then to add this obnoxious vinyl sound that you hear, I used Abbey Road's vinyl, which is my favorite vinyl emulator, just using the print generation AR turntable DJ cartridge, and just really cranking the noise and cackle up. And that is because if you're going for that dark lo-fi hip hop sound, you need to have those ambient textures on top of the VST that you're using. Otherwise it just sounds like plain VST music, right? Now, the other thing that I recommend is, going into, you can find them royalty free, you can find them on Splice or whatever, but just going into your bag, finding some Foley sounds. This sound right here was just a Foley bell. And actually, let me turn it up so you could hear it better. Right, and all I did was I time stretched it. I ran it through Melodyne and tuned it to the root note of the track. Then I used the this send as a post fader, and instead of actually mixing in the sound from the track, I just have it feeding. I have it feeding into this Valhalla Reverb, with like a super long tail, and I've got it tucked down in the mix so that it's just something ambient. I don't want to focus on the actual tone or the notes of this. I just want it to kind of be there so that when a producer comes across this sample, they hear it, and it's not just like every other piano sample. And that's really what you got to find is like your Foley, your texture of what you can add to these seemingly simple piano lines or guitar lines or whatever instrument you're using to compose, in order to generate that interest, because there's just so much competition from talented people in this space. So you can hear it now. That sounds pretty great. So the next thing, if you want to hear it in context, we could just take a quick quick break beat and hear how it comes together. You hear it right now. Hey yo, boom, 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 boom. That's it. You got it. So, texture, a cool Foley sound, making sure making sure start with a good chord progression like the ones that we provide at studio1tutorials.com, and just take extra care when you are composing, that you're that you're really swinging your notes off the grid, and don't just use like a stock swing. Don't just use like the humanized feature. Really get in there and pay attention to what you're doing. I mean, it's only one instrument. Take your time with it. Have fun. So this is CMP with Craftmaster Productions, Studio1tutorials.com. You all keep it simple. Do not be basic, and we will see you on the next one, fam.